The town of Dry Creek didn't like strangers, and it liked Clara Mayfield even less. Dust drifted low across the empty main street that morning, wind tugging at the loose end of her shawl as she walked with a tin bucket swinging against her leg. Folks paused when they saw her. Men at the saloon porch, women by the mercantile door. Whispers trailed after her like burrs on a skirt hem. "That's the slave's daughter," someone muttered. Clara kept her eyes straight ahead, her chin high. She'd learned that was the only way to make it through town, without breaking. The dirt underfoot was pale and dry, the boards of buildings warped from years of wind and grit. Everything felt sun-bleached and tired, though the day itself wasn't hot, just a kind of thin, still air that held on to silence too long. At the well, she set down her bucket. Her reflection in the rippling water looked back at her, dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, and a strength she didn't always feel. Her mother used to say, "They see your father's face when they look at you. That's why they hate you. You're proof of what they did." A boot scraped behind her. "Morning, Clara." She turned slightly. Jeb Carter leaned against the post, a young ranch hand with a sneer that came easier than a smile. His friend stood a few steps behind him, laughter already bubbling in their throats. "Morning, Jeb," she said quietly. He kicked at the dirt. "Heard you're still working for old Mr. Benson at the post. You saving up to buy yourself a husband." The men laughed. Clara kept filling her bucket. Jeb stepped closer. "You too proud to answer?" "Just trying to get home before the rain," she said. The sky was a muted gray, the air carrying that faint smell that came before a drizzle. "Rain," Jeb repeated, and before she could move, he kicked the bucket over. Water spilled across her skirt, soaking the hem. The laughter came again, louder now. Clara froze, hands trembling, then slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the air. Jeb's grin vanished. His jaw tightened, his hand grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. "You think you can touch me," he hissed. "Let go." He didn't. His friend stepped closer, forming a half-circle around her. Then came a sound that stopped them cold. A gun hammer clicked back. A man stood at the far end of the street, dust swirling around his boots, rifle steady in his hands. His hat shadowed his eyes, but his voice carried. "Let her go," he said. The man hesitated. "Go on," the stranger repeated, tone even, eyes fixed on Jeb. Jeb dropped her arm. "Ain't your business, mister." The rifle didn't lower. "It is now." The wind stirred, carrying the smell of rain and gun oil. Nobody spoke. Finally, Jeb spat in the dirt and walked off, his friends following. The stranger didn't move until they disappeared down the alley. Then he turned and walked toward his horse without another word. Clara stood there breathing hard, her arm aching where Jeb had grabbed her. The rain started, a light drizzle that turned the dust to dark streaks. She watched the stranger ride away, wondering what kind of man aimed a rifle at a fool just to defend a woman he didn't know. Later that afternoon, the drizzle had turned to a thin mist. Clara found the stranger near the livery stable, brushing down a tall bay horse. The animal's breath came out in soft clouds, the ground beneath its hooves slick with mud. She hesitated before speaking. "You didn't have to do that." He looked up, eyes gray as slate beneath the brim of his hat. "Did what?" "Step in." He shrugged. Didn't seem right, what they were doing. "They'll come after you for it." "I've been chased for worse." His voice carried the weight of long roads and too many regrets. His coat was weathered, the edges frayed. His hands looked steady, though a faint tremor ran through one as he tied off the reins. "What's your name?" she asked. "Eli Harper." She nodded. "Clara Mayfield." He seemed to recognize the name. "You're the healer's girl." "Was," she said quietly. "My mother passed last winter. I'm sorry." She looked down. No one else was. For a moment neither spoke. The only sounds were the horse shifting its weight and the soft patter of rain on the roof. Eli said, "Town like this. Folks remember too much and forgive too little." Clara gave a faint, tired smile. "You talk like you've been here before." "I've been everywhere like it." He picked up his saddle, slinging it over the rail. "You best stay clear of those men. They won't forget you embarrassed them." "I never do," she said. When she turned to leave, he stopped her. You got anyone looking out for you? No. He studied her a moment longer, then nodded once. Be careful, Miss Mayfield. The way he said it carried something beyond concern, like a man who knew exactly how the world broke good people. That night, the rain fell harder, tapping against her cabin's small window like restless fingers. Clara sat at the table, mending a torn sleeve, the lamplight flickering. She thought about Eli Harper, the calm in his eyes, the quiet strength in his voice. Maybe, she thought, not all white men in Texas were the same. Then outside, a sound, voices, laughter. Her breath caught. The first shout came from outside her window. Then came another, closer. Clara stood, heart pounding. Through the pain, she saw movement, shadows against the rain. Get her out, someone yelled. She ran for the door just as a rock crashed through it, flames licking from a rag tied to its end. It rolled across the floor, fire spilling out in bright, hungry tongues. Smoke filled the small room. She grabbed a blanket, tried to smother the fire, but another torch came through the back window. The cabin was catching fast. She stumbled to the door, coughing, eyes watering. Outside, the wind whipped the smoke sideways, and she saw them. 3 figures on horseback, faces hidden beneath hats and bandanas. Teach her to stay where she belongs, one shouted. The fire roared up behind her. Clara ran into rain barefoot, clutching nothing but the clothes on her back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the cabin was only aglow behind her through the drizzle and smoke. When she tripped and fell into the mud, she stayed there, shaking. Then she heard hooves. For a moment, she thought they'd come to finish it. She curled up tighter, but the horse slowed beside her. Clara, a man's voice said. She looked up. Eli dismounted, his coat dark with rain. He crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. You hurt? She shook her head, though tears cut lines through the soot on her face. Your place, he said quietly. It's gone. She nodded. Eli looked back toward the faint orange glow. Was it them? She didn't answer, but he knew. Come on, he said, standing. We need to move before they come back. I've got nowhere to go. Then you'll ride with me? He pulled her to her feet, helped her onto his horse. She winced as the cold leather met her bare feet. You can't. I can, he said, and I will. The horse started forward, hooves splashing through puddles. The rain eased to a drizzle again, the world silent except for the rhythm of hooves and the hiss of cooling embers behind them. Clara didn't speak. She just held on, her fingers gripping Eli's coat. After a long while, she asked softly, Why help me? Because no one else would, he said. They rode through the gray morning, past the edge of town, until the last lights disappeared behind them. The plain stretched wide and pale under the overcast sky, wind sighing across the grass. Clara leaned her head against his back, eyes closing. For the first time since her mother's death, she let someone else carry her. Eli glanced down once at her hands gripping his coat, small, strong, stubborn, the kind that had seen more than her share of cruelty. You rest, he murmured. We've got a long road yet. The wind rose, carrying the smell of rain and ash. Behind them, the smoke from her burned home drifted upward and vanished into the low clouds. Ahead lay open land, cold, uncertain, and alive. The plains stretched for miles, colorless under a pale morning sky. Wind slid low across the grass, bending the stalks like quiet waves. Eli's horse moved steady through it, breath puffing white in the chill. Clara sat behind him, wrapped in his worn coat, her head bowed against the cold. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the rhythm of hooves and the faint creak of leather. Eli's jaw was set tight. He kept his eyes on the horizon, though his mind stayed on the burning cabin behind them. He'd seen fires before, towns razed during the war, camps torched at night, but this one stayed with him in a way he couldn't shake. Maybe because she'd been inside it. Maybe because it reminded him of the boy he couldn't save years ago. He glanced back at Clara. Her face was streaked with soot, eyes hollow but alert. She wasn't broken. Not yet. That mattered. You should sleep, he said quietly. She opened her eyes. I can't. You'll need your strength. Her lips twitched faintly. Strength didn't help much last night. He didn't argue. The land opened wider ahead. No trees, just dry creek beds and brittle sagebrush. The smell of damp earth still hung in the air from the rain. By midday, the sky lightened but stayed clouded. Clara finally asked, "Where are we going?" "North," he said. "There's a trading outpost 2 days from here. You'll be safe there." "Safe?" She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Safe don't exist for people like me." He looked over his shoulder at her. "Maybe it does if you ride far enough. Or maybe trouble just rides faster." He didn't answer. She was right. Trouble always found you, no matter how far you ran. But he wasn't about to tell her that. When the sun began to dip behind the clouds, they stopped near a shallow gully where a few dead trees leaned against the wind. Eli dismounted and helped Clara down. She winced when her bare feet touched the cold ground. "Here," he said, pulling a pair of worn boots from his saddlebag. "They'll be big, but they'll do." She hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "Put 'em on." She obeyed. The boots hung loose, but the moment her toes sank into the dry leather, she exhaled softly. He built a small fire, shielded from the wind by a line of rocks. For a while they ate in silence, dry beef, stale bread. When Clara finally spoke, her voice was small but steady. "You've been in a war, haven't you?" Eli's eyes flicked toward the firelight. "How'd you guess?" "The way you move, always watching." He poked the coals with a stick. "Confederate cavalry, Virginia regiment." She studied him. "You regret it?" "Every damn day." The wind picked up, carrying a hiss through the dry grass. Clara drew the coat tighter. "My mother told me once," she said, "the war changed nothing for folks like us. Just made it legal to starve instead of being owned." Eli looked at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his expression. Not pity, understanding. "I can't change what happened," he said, "but I can make sure you live long enough to choose what happens next." She met his eyes. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because someone once did the same for me." They said nothing more after that. The wind settled, the fire crackled, and the night stretched out across the plains, cold, endless, and quiet. By the next afternoon, the clouds had thickened. The air turned damp and heavy, the kind that promised rain before nightfall. They reached a river valley by dusk, the water swollen from recent storms. The current moved quick, rippling with foam where it struck half-sunken rocks. The only way forward was across. Eli studied the river's edge. "We'll cross here. Hold tight when I tell you." Clara stared at the dark water. "It looks deep." "It ain't as bad as it looks." He wasn't sure that was true. He mounted first, then reached down for her. She took his hand, fingers trembling, and climbed up behind him. The horse snorted, uneasy. "Ready?" "No," she said honestly. He smiled slightly. "Good answer." They entered the water. The cold hit like knives. Clara gasped, clutching his coat. The horse pushed forward, muscles straining against the current. Halfway across, a log came loose upstream, slamming against the animal's side. It reared, nearly throwing them both. Clara screamed. Eli tightened his grip. "Hold on." The river surged higher. For a heartbeat, he lost the reins, felt the horse shift under him. Then Clara's weight slipped. "Eli!" He reached back blindly, caught her wrist just as she went under. The river tore at them both. He hauled her up, locking an arm around her waist. "Don't fight it," he shouted. "Let it take us down." The current spun them, dragging them to the far bank. They hit the mud hard, coughing water. The horse stumbled out nearby, soaked but alive. Clara lay on her back, gasping. "You said it wasn't deep." Eli coughed, half laughing. "I was wrong." Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. He stripped off his coat and threw it over her shoulders. She shivered, teeth chattering. "You're freezing, too." "I've been colder." They found a small cave near the riverbank and ducked inside. Eli started another fire, his hands shaking as he struck the flint. When the flames caught, a faint warmth filled the space. Clara sat close to the fire, steam rising from her wet clothes. "You could have let me drown," she murmured. He looked at her. Not a chance. The rain hammered against the rocks outside. For a long time, the fire was the only sound between them. Finally, she said, "You risked your life for me twice now." "I didn't think about it." "You did. Men always think before they do something that dangerous." He gave a small, tired grin. "Then maybe I'm not much of a man." She studied him in the flickering light. His face was lined, the faint scar under his jaw catching the glow. "You've lost someone before," she said quietly. He froze. "Who was it?" He looked into the fire. "A boy, 12 years old. My father gave him to me as a servant. I freed him before the war ended. But he didn't make it out, caught between two armies. I've been trying to pay that debt ever since." Clara's eyes softened. "You don't owe anyone for being human." He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said he didn't believe her. Outside, the rain began to fade. The storm passed, leaving behind only the steady drip of water from the rocks. Clara pulled the coat tighter, glancing toward the cave's mouth. "What happens when we reach that outpost?" "You'll get new clothes, food, maybe a roof for a while." "And you?" "I keep moving." "Where to?" He shrugged. "Wherever trouble ain't." She smiled faintly. "Then you'll never stop riding." He didn't deny it. By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and clear. Mist clung low to the grass. They followed the river until the land rose into a stretch of empty range. A sagging fence ran along the hill, leading to a weather-beaten ranch house that leaned against the wind like an old man ready to fall. Eli dismounted first, scanning the yard. No smoke, no animals. Must have been empty for years. Clara followed him inside. Dust lay thick over everything. A broken table, a cold hearth, a chair missing one leg. She traced her fingers along a cracked wall where something faintly burned into it caught her eye. It was an iron brand, letters long faded but still visible. SM. She stepped back. These were slave markings. Eli looked at it, face hard. Guess some ghosts don't know when to quit. She turned toward him, her voice tight. "This land remembers pain. Every nail, every board." He nodded slowly. Maybe it's time someone remembered it different. He found a blanket in a trunk and shook off the dust. "We'll rest here tonight, then move on at dawn." While he fixed the door latch, she sat by the cold hearth, holding her mother's half-burned locket. What was left of it after the fire. The silver had blackened, but the clasp still worked. She opened it, saw the small portrait inside, her mother smiling faintly, eyes strong and sad. Eli watched her from across the room. She was a good woman, wasn't she? The best. He came closer, crouching by the hearth. "You've got her eyes." Clara smiled, faint and weary. "So they tell me it's what makes folks remember who my father was." He reached up, touched the brim of his hat, then handed it to her. "Here, keeps the rain off better than that shawl." She blinked. "You're giving me your hat?" "Just borrowing it to you," he said. "Don't let them see your shame." She straightened, eyes meeting his. "It ain't my shame, Eli." For the first time, he smiled, not a tired smirk, but a real one. "Good. Hold on to that." They stayed quiet after that, the wind moaning through the empty house. Night settled slow, the plains outside turning silver under the rising moon. Eli lay awake on the floorboards, listening to the wind and the faint sound of her breathing. Something about it steadied him. Maybe it was the way she'd stopped trembling. Maybe it was the way she said it ain't my shame like she finally believed it. He closed his eyes, knowing morning would bring more trouble. But for the first time in years, he didn't mind the idea of having someone protect again. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and grass. Somewhere far off, a coyote called. Clara rolled onto her side and whispered to herself, "If there's a God still watching, maybe he ain't done with us yet." And in the quiet, Eli almost believed her. The road back to Dry Creek was long and cold, the wind biting across the open land like it had something to prove. Dust swept low along the ground, gathering in small spirals that danced before fading. Clara and Eli had been riding since dawn, the chill of early spring pressing through their coats. The land around them was gray and wide, a world stripped bare of comfort. For days, they'd been hiding among the low ridges east of town. Eli had found them shelter in an abandoned line shack, four walls, a leaking roof, and enough distance from Dry Creek to keep them unseen. But the quiet couldn't last. They both knew it. The men who burned Clara's home wouldn't stop at fire. In places like this, vengeance rode on horseback and didn't sleep easy. Eli reined in his horse as they reached a rise overlooking the town. Smoke curled from chimneys below. The streets were wet from last night's rain, the ruts filled with standing water. The gray morning light flattened everything. No warmth, no color, just the hard truth of the place. "You sure about this?" Eli asked, eyes scanning the town. Clara's hands tightened on the reins. "They burned everything I had. If I leave, it means they win." He watched her face, the bruises fading now, but the look in her eyes sharp as ever. "Revenge gets a person killed," he said. "I'm not looking for revenge," she answered. "I want my name back." Eli looked away, jaw set. He knew what that felt like, to want something you couldn't take without blood. But he also knew there was no reasoning with her now. Clara had fire in her that couldn't be talked out of. They rode down slowly, sticking to the edge of town. The place looked smaller than before, worn down by its own meanness. No one noticed them at first. Folks went about their business, mending wagons, hauling sacks, standing in the drizzle near the saloon porch. Then a boy spotted them and ran off shouting. By the time they reached the mercantile, a few men had gathered. Jeb Carter was among them. "Well, look who crawled back," Jeb said, stepping forward. His lip curled into a smirk. "Didn't think you'd show your face again, girl." Clara dismounted, standing straight despite the mud clinging to her skirt. "You burned my home," she said. He laughed. "You got proof of that?" Eli swung off his horse, his eyes never leaving Jeb. "You're about 1 second from giving her all the proof she needs." A few of Jeb's friends shifted uneasily. Eli's rifle hung at his side, the strap worn smooth from years of use, and his stance said he wouldn't hesitate to lift it. The tension drew tight across the square, like a pulled rope. From across the street, Sheriff Nolan appeared. He was a thick man with a lined face, his badge dull from wear. "What's all this now?" he said, voice rough from tobacco. Clara turned to him. "They set my house on fire. Tried to kill me." The sheriff spat into the mud. "You got witnesses?" "Just a man who saved me," she said, motioning toward Eli. Nolan looked Eli up and down. "You a drifter?" Eli's tone stayed calm. "Served in the cavalry. Been doing odd work since." "Then maybe you don't know how things run around here," the sheriff said. "We settle our own matters." "She nearly got burned alive," Eli said evenly. "That how you settle things?" The sheriff's gaze hardened. "Careful how you talk, son." Clara stepped forward. "If you won't give me justice, I'll take it myself." That earned a few murmurs. A woman raising her voice in Dry Creek was as rare as rain in July. But Clara didn't back down. She stood in the gray daylight, hair damp from drizzle, hands trembling just enough for Eli to notice. But her chin didn't move. The sheriff sighed. "Go on home, girl. This town's got enough trouble without you stirring more." "I don't have a home," she said. "You saw to that." Before the sheriff could answer, Eli stepped closer. "We're not leaving." That was when Jeb laughed again. "Then you best start digging your graves." He reached for his pistol, but Eli was faster. The shot cracked through the street like thunder, echoing off the walls. Jeb's hat flew off his head as the bullet buried itself in the post beside him. The crowd scattered, screaming. Jeb froze, staring at the hole an inch from his ear. Eli lowered his rifle slowly. "Next one don't miss." The sheriff's hand hovered near his own gun, but he didn't draw. His eyes darted between the two of them and the watching townsfolk. Something in Eli's calm unnerved him, the look of a man who'd already made peace with dying if he had to. Clara said quietly, "We're not here to start a war, but we won't live scared anymore." Rain began again, thin and steady. Eli holstered his rifle. They turned away, walking down the muddy street toward the church at the far end. The townsfolk watched them go in silence. For the first time, no one whispered. The church was small and old, its white paint long since peeled to gray. The door creaked as Eli pushed it open. Inside, the air was cool and still, the faint scent of damp wood mixing with candle wax. Clara followed, closing the door behind her. Outside, the rain beat softly on the roof, steady as a clock. For a long time, neither spoke. Eli walked down the aisle, running a hand along the worn pews. "Place feels like it's been waiting," he said quietly. Clara moved to the altar, touching the rough with a cross. "My mother used to say, 'God, don't visit places like Dry Creek anymore.'" Eli set his hat down on the bench. "Maybe he sends people instead." She turned to him, eyes wet but steady. "Why'd you really come back with me?" He looked up. "Because running never fixed anything. I learned that the hard way." She nodded slowly, voice soft. "You think they'll stop now?" "No," he said, "but they'll think twice." The rain deepened, rattling against the windows. Thunder rolled far off across the plains. Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. A deed, worn at the edges. "Found this in what's left of your cabin," he said. "Your land's still yours. Don't let them take it." Her breath caught. "You saved it?" He nodded. Didn't seem right it should burn with the rest. Clara took the paper, holding it like something sacred. "I don't know what to say." "Don't need to," he said. "You've done enough standing." She laughed softly, tears breaking free. "You sound like my mother." Eli smiled faintly. She raised a strong one. The door creaked suddenly. Both turned. Sheriff Nolan stood there, soaked through, hat dripping rainwater onto the floor. "You two made quite the scene," he said. Eli didn't move. "You here to arrest us?" The sheriff sighed. "No. Jeb's gone. Took his men and rode out. Guess you scared him more than I figured possible." Clara's brow furrowed. "That's it." The sheriff nodded. "This town's seen enough gunfire. I'll see to it no one bothers you again." When he left, silence settled once more. The storm outside softened to a light patter. Eli picked up his hat, brushing off the rain. "Guess that's as close to peace as this place gets." Clara smiled faintly. "You could leave now. Start fresh somewhere." He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped closer. "Maybe I already did." The space between them felt smaller than breath. The air carried the scent of wet dust and candle smoke. Clara looked up at him. This man who'd risked everything for some of the world had thrown aside. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. He reached out, resting his hat gently on her head. "Ain't about owing," he said. "It's about choosing." Her lips parted, trembling. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he said, voice low, "you're my wife now, if you'll have me." For a heartbeat, all she could do was stare. The world outside seemed to still, the wind easing, rain slowing, time holding its breath. Then she smiled through the tears. "You sure you know what you're asking?" Eli grinned. "Reckon I do." She stepped closer until their foreheads touched. "Then I reckon you got yourself a wife." The rain stopped completely. Light broke through the clouds, pale and clean, spilling across the church floor. Not gold, not glowing, just clear, honest daylight. Outside, the plain stretched wide and quiet, wind moving softly through grass. Dry Creek remained what it had always been, a hard place for hard people, but something in it had shifted. Maybe not the town itself, but the space around two souls who'd chosen to stand their ground. They walked out together, side by side, her hand in his, the hat still resting on her head. The street lay empty, the puddles reflecting sky. Somewhere far off, a meadowlark began to sing. Clara looked toward the horizon and whispered, "Guess freedom don't come easy." Eli smiled faintly. "Never does." They rode away as the clouds lifted, leaving behind the ashes and ghosts of Dry Creek. Ahead, the land stretched endless, unbroken, a promise made in dust and quiet faith.